All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, welcome to another edition of In the News. Let me just go ahead and give you the disclaimer now. I am sick. If you can't tell by my voice, that's why I haven't done a video in like a week and a half. One of them little kids from my center got me sick. I know exactly which one it is. And it's funny because the main rule I always give the kids is, if you get sent home from school because you're sick, or you don't go to school because you're sick, do not show up at the center because I don't need you to spread the germs to me. But anyway, little boy still came anyway. And it was funny because I knew he was sick. Like, he's like 7. He's like, no, Mr. Michael, I'm not sick. I mean, nose running, eyes watery, whole mouth dry. Any other time, he'd be bouncing and flipping off the walls up in there. But on this specific day, he's sitting down, collected. And, I'm like, wait a minute. Usually I'm telling him to sit down somewhere. He did his homework. I'm like, okay, he's sick. So anyway, he gave me his germs. And so I'm pissed off about it. But I told him when he turned 18, come find me because he and I are boxing on site. Like, he got 11 years to get some practice in. So it's on site. Hopefully my joints and stuff aren't aching by then. But listen, if I don't make it before then because I'm still sick and I don't make it, listen, at my funeral, please make sure that you get a stand-up comedian to do my eulogy. And I want Fantasia to sing I'll Take You There. All right? And close casket, please. I don't need nobody looking at me when I'm not at my best. Anyway, moving on. I'm just being silly. Oh, side note, if you see me drinking out of my little teacup, it's not because I'm a shady person. I'm actually sick. I'm just trying to drink the tea. I miss the days when old girl lived with me because she made me that hot toddy that time I was sick. And I mean, that thing kicked in like boom. Plus, I was sitting here trying to be all fake healthy and not take no medicine and stuff. And, let me vitamin C supplements and all that. Ain't none of that crap work. When I tell you, by day 3, I went to that store and got some NyQuil and Excedrin and, man. Anyway, moving on. Congrats are in order to Tamron Hall, who announced, in addition to being pregnant, that she's also going to be having her own syndicated talk show in September. And the reason I'm happy for her getting this show is I thought it was really jacked up how NBC did her and Al Roker with the Today Show. You remember, she had a segment on the Today Show with Al Roker that they got rid of so that they could introduce Megyn Kelly, old girl from Fox News who didn't know that blackface was racist, as if she didn't grow up in the 60s and the 70s, as if she wasn't somebody who went to college and studied journalism, as if she wasn't somebody who was familiar with history. That Megyn Kelly. And so, it's funny how things always work. See, when you be doing wrong and doing some shady stuff, you see how things always will balance out. So even though Megyn got to leave and keep her $60 million or whatever she got to keep, look what happened for Tamron Hall. Now she got her own show. So, and what? So good for her. I'm hoping that the show is different than what's out with the other ones. My biggest beef with a lot of the daytime talk shows that are out now is that there's not really that element of substance anymore. One of the things I liked about talk shows in the 80s and the 90s was that you had your variety of shows. Yes, you still had your shows that were kind of centered on celebrity. And yeah, you had the trash talk shows where it was going to be the mom was pregnant with the son's sister's uncle's dog's kid and all of that. And this person was a prostitute and then they slept with the pastor. You had those kind of shows. But then you also had the shows that tackled a lot of issues that were going on within society, where they tackled race. They tackled, politics and sexuality and mental illness and murder and death and all these different things like that. And you're not really seeing that anymore. Today, it looks like every talk show is centered on celebrity culture. So, like, a perfect example would be something like Ellen. If you watch The Ellen Show, you're never going to get an episode where she's going to talk about anything. And yes, maybe that's because that's not her lane. But, man, it's like every talk show is celebrity. It's like you watch Ellen, it's going to be her talking to some celebrity about whatever they got going. Somebody's going to jump out of a box and scare somebody. There's going to be a dog run across the stage. She's going to do a dance break, and they're going to party, and there's going to be a giveaway where she gives a $200,000 scholarship to a kid who wore neon green shoelaces and got made fun of at school. And that's her show. But what I remember about some of the older shows, specifically, I'll give Phil Donahue some credit. I remember his show. Talked about a lot of different things. And even when he didn't understand some of the elements of what it was, he would make sure he had people in there who knew what they were talking about. And if he didn't agree with them, he wouldn't try to fight them down. He would just let them have their space. And so you saw on his show, he gave a lot of platforms to people who didn't normally have big voices in major media. So I'll always remember he did that panel discussion with a bunch of different black leaders and activists, where it was like you had Sister Souljah, you had at the time it was the mayor of DC, I can't remember her name, you had a bunch of people, just and mind you, it was like this whole the episode is called The Conversation is Race. I think it's still on YouTube, but that was a really interesting episode to watch. And I mean, he would have people like Louis Farrakhan on there, and they just talked about a bunch of different things, elements of race and everything. Even though I don't like Geraldo Rivera that much either, his show did some of the same thing. Oprah show before like 95 and back did the same thing. They did the OJ verdict. And, these shows used to cover the LA riots, and they would cover what was going on in the election and cover, drug addiction. And so now all of the shows are fluff. They're all, what's the Kardashians up to? Oh my gosh, you have a new hairstyle. We have to spend 10 minutes talking about it. And then what makes it funny is when you go back to something like the 2016 election, you had so many people who were shocked that the results were the way they were because they were under the impression that things were good. And mainly, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that they've just been being fed fluff in media. You know, if you were somebody who was like a daytime talk show circuit kind of person, and that's how you spent your days all day because you didn't work or some crap like that, if you had that luxury, as far as having somebody else in the house paying the bills, you know, you sit here and see so many episodes of everybody being happy and this person shopping with this politician. You would have never known that behind closed doors, your next door neighbor felt a totally different way. You know what I mean? And so I think that got a lot of people caught up because, you know what's funny? You never hear the term post-racial anymore, huh? Remember before 2016 election, or actually before about 2015, once the current president got in the game, you never heard the phrase, or you always heard post-racial. We're a post-racial society. There were all kind of think pieces and people telling you that racism had ended and this, that, and the third. And you even had people on the Supreme Court rolling back on civil rights acts and voting rights acts because everything's even now. And now look where we at. And I said, So I would hope that Tamron Hall's show has some substance, you know. Just because we got a million other shows that got a celebrity dish. You know, how many more celebrity dish shows do we need? Or celebrity kiss up to them because they, I don't know, they made a new cookie line and now we get to give the whole audience samples of the cookies. Yay. So hopefully it's a good show. I want to move and I want to talk about the Central Park 5 series that's about to come out. There's a new series that's going to pretty much, you know, it's pretty much reliving the Central Park 5 situation. Some people were saying, well, they've already had a documentary. Do we need a series? I say yes, and the reason why is because, and by the way, if you don't remember the Central Park 5, that's just the situation where you had the 5 teenagers who were framed by the NYPD for raping a white woman in Central Park and almost killing her. And so, long story short, you know, this woman gets not killed, but, you know, raped at the park and everything like that, and the police just know that they want to get somebody pretty much. And so they pretty much go out of their way and find every black male adolescent that was in the area at the time. And it gets so bad where, you know, these kids, they're all found guilty because they end up confessing because they sat in these hour-long interrogations, like multiple hours, like sitting in there till 4 a.m, and everything like that. And they end up spending all these years in jail. And fortunately, somebody went and investigated the case. And, you know, thanks to like DNA and everything else like that, they were able to be released. And then there was also like I think a 38 million, either 38 million or $41 million settlement where, you know, they got some money. Even though I still don't think that was enough because they got to split that 5 ways. But I think it's important that they do have this series because the documentary did a great job of just telling you everything. And it was very detailed. But I think seeing it from the perspective of the actual victims, and when I say victims, I'm speaking of the 5 who were framed, I'm speaking of their families, I'm speaking of their friends, I'm speaking of everybody who was put in a position, and even people who've been accused of raping somebody who haven't done it. From that aspect, I think you get to see the emotional aspect of what it feels like to be in those shoes. Because, I mean, they had these kids in Rikers Island. You know, some of these kids were in jail for 13 years. Absolutely crazy. And the worst part, one of the kids who ended up in jail wasn't even at the park that day. He was spending the night at his friend's house. The police showed up to the friend's house to interview the friend, and the officer was like, oh, well, your friend can come too if he wants to come. So the friend just came to kind of support. And next thing you know, he's confessing to raping a woman at the park that he wasn't even at. And I think that opens a conversation about practices when it comes to interrogating different groups of people. And I think one of the biggest lessons you can always tell, especially youth, is if you're in any kind of situation with the police where you have to be interrogated, you don't say anything until you have representation, even if you didn't do anything. Because after enough hours of being psychologically attacked, you know, and you have this authoritative figure telling you this, that, and the third, and your whole life will be over, look what happens. And, you know, these kids all pretty much, you know, went and confessed to doing this thing. And it was so bad because you remember Donald Trump took out the newspaper article saying bring the death penalty back for kids. I'm like, oh my God. And I mean, it affected so many. And the worst part, I think the saddest bit, there's 2 things I always remember. One is the case was too much for one of the kids' fathers, and he walked out on the whole family. It was too much for him. He walked out. And so you had an entire, you know, adolescent teenage male lose the relationship with his father because the father just, it was too much for him. Too much. He didn't really know if his son was guilty or not, and he walked out. That mess broke up a whole family. And that individual, the son who I'm speaking about, didn't even appear in the documentary because there was just so much that's still emotionally draining for him. And so, I mean, this stuff really scarred him. And the second thing that always just gets me, like right here, is one of the victims when you hear him speak, when you hear his vernacular and his diction, it's still like that of a 13-year-old, even though he's in his 50s. And it's like, this kid missed out on getting the experience to grow up and getting the education he could have received and everything like that. And I mean, they've all made well with themselves in due time, but those moments were taken from them. And I think that's one of the reasons why we saw what happened with Kalief Browder, who is Browder or Browder. I would say the last name wrong, but he was accused of stealing a backpack, and he was locked up in Rikers for 3 years and spent 23 hours of the day in solitary confinement. And so when he was released at 19, imagine he never even went to court. Like this was just waiting to go to trial. He was never convicted of anything. Unfortunately, when he got out, he was not able to make do with what was. He wasn't able to rehabilitate himself and rematriculate into society, and he ended up taking his own life. And it was so sad because, he was already adopted and everything like that, and it was a lot on the family because they couldn't afford the bond and the bail, and it just sucks. So I think it opens a lot of conversations, which is why I support the idea of them doing a series on this. I think more people need to see, as we continue to have all of these different atrocities, because I did see the bit as far as Stephon Clark's, the officers, of course, they got off, like I said would happen. And the same thing with Terence Crutcher. There's not going to be any civil rights charges brought against Betty Shelby, who was the officer that shot Terence Crutcher. That was the individual who, he was stalled because of some car trouble, and the officer apparently went to help. And next thing you know, he's dead. All that plays a role, especially when you see who your Department of Justice heads are. You see who they were nominated by. So, there's a lot of conversations to be had. And I think the more that you put these projects and these documentaries and these series out, it continues to not only archive what's really happening in society, but it also brings awareness. Because one of the things I've seen happen is the narratives are starting to change. They're trying to start changing history. You're seeing a lot of schools try to take things like slavery out of the textbooks, or switch it around and say, they were unpaid interns. I don't know which school district I saw where they were talking. Oh, it was a clip I saw where the school district were pretty much teaching the kids that, slavery was almost voluntary. Some people went to America for a better life. I'm like, y'all don't even be trying anymore. And then there's some Wendy Williams fans who are a little disappointed because they feel that she hasn't been transparent about what's going on in her personal life. She recently made a return to her talk show, and she briefly addressed some health issues and some of the things going on with her marriage. And a few fans feel a little disappointed because they feel that, hey, you spend all day talking about everybody else and what's going on in their house, but now that you're in the forefront, you don't want to say much. And so a few folks were disappointed. I don't really follow Wendy like that, so I was out of the loop. I had to go and dig up what the rumors were. And so apparently, from the rumors for the last 2 months, Wendy's husband's been cheating for years, and he got like a mistress pregnant, and he even bought the mistress a house, and he's apparently abusive. And then his mother even, I guess, told one of the little trash magazines that he was abusive to Wendy, and there may possibly be a drug problem as well, and a bunch of different stories here and there. I'm not really mixed, so I don't know. Y'all can confirm it. You got to go to one of them other YouTubers who spend all day in the celebrity realm. But I'll tell you this, I could have told you from the jump, Wendy Williams is not somebody who's going to put her business out there. And listen, like the main thing is, the only time you've ever seen Wendy Williams really ever address anything is when sponsors start pulling out. And the only time I've ever seen her address something she said or address any kind of animosity in her direction or controversy was when she said the stuff about HBCUs and why she found it offensive that there were HBCUs, but there weren't white, historically white colleges. And you had sponsors start pulling out. That's the only time I've ever seen her address something that was really just kind of shaken under her feet. Any other time when people are mad at her about something or there's different, things she says that pisses people off, she never addresses it. When people call her out, you remember Janet Hubert from Fresh Prince made all kind of different posts calling Wendy out all the time, especially when Whitney Houston died. She's like, oh, please, you're full of crap. You spend all day bashing black women all day, whether it's Whitney or Janet or Beyonce or Mariah, and now all of a sudden you want to sit here and cry because Whitney's dead, and when in reality you played a role in her demise by constantly bashing, all of that. She never would address any of that. And even when the Aaliyah movie came out and everybody was pissed off because it sucked, the only thing she said was, well, it was the highest rated thing on TV that night, so what? So I don't know exactly what y'all would expect Wendy to do. She's not going to put her personal business out there. That's just my opinion. But we'll see how that unfolds. Anyway, moving on. I wanted to spend some time talking about the Leaving Neverland documentary because y'all have been blowing me up about that as well. I have not seen it. I know there's an episode that was on tonight, but I'm currently doing this video, so it's on right now while I'm doing this video. Plus, I told you, I've been sick, so I wasn't trying to raise my blood pressure yet. I got to be in a space to watch that. But I'll say this, it's been a while since I've seen a project come out and the responses are so divided. Like, man, there's one extreme on this end, one extreme on the other. There's not even really a middle ground. I said, wow, interesting. And I think that's because, with everything surrounding this documentary and the things that have been said about Michael Jackson, this is pretty much not a narrative. This is pretty much a situation of tangible evidence versus personal account. And so you're trying to find a way to merge those two, and they're not compatible. So I think that's why you're seeing such extremes. And when you're talking about tangible evidence, the majority of the tangible evidence actually works in Michael Jackson's favor. When you talk about the fact that there was the FBI investigation for 10 years and they found nothing. The FBI did the random raid in the house and they didn't really find a whole lot. The not guilty verdict on 14 different counts and a bunch of things on that element. And then when you're talking personal accounts, what makes it hard is that when we're having these situations, when you have these situations, sometimes it can be very difficult to have tangible evidence, and you really just have to trust the discernment and the integrity of the person making the accusation. And so I think because a lot of people feel that Wade Robinson has so many things stacked up that are questionable, it's making it very hard for a lot of people to believe anything in this documentary. And from what I've read, people are saying it's not really something that has, like I said, any tangible evidence. It's all personal accounts. So it's pretty much all about how you feel about the accusers in the documentary or what your thoughts are on Michael Jackson. And the interesting thing is that, you're seeing two extremes. You're seeing some people on one side, especially those who are really big Michael supporters, saying Wade Robinson and the other accuser, they're using this as a come up for cash. They're saying the bit about Wade Robinson spent all this time always defending Michael. He testified under oath that nothing ever happened and everything like that. And to their argument, they're saying, if the things were necessarily true that Michael was doing, why would you jeopardize a criminal case in 2005, and ruin the justice for the accuser that accused Michael then? Just because if you had whatever was going on with Michael, why didn't you call it out then during the trial? And instead, you said nothing. And now, if that person was seeking justice, they didn't get it because Michael got off. That's one of the arguments that some are making. And another argument I've seen being made is that apparently, so Wade Robinson had always been doing all of these different Michael projects since he died. I remember he was in the tribute with Janet at the VMAs. He did a bunch of different little projects here and there. They said he had been trying to get the lead position in the Cirque du Soleil Michael Jackson Experience type show. He didn't get that position, and then that's around the same time he started making the allegations that Michael had molested him for all these years. And so people are saying, the cards just aren't adding up. Then on the flip side, you have a lot of people who are like, the hell with all of that. Again, it's always going to be awkward when you got a grown man hanging with a bunch of kids all the time. And one of the arguments I saw, somebody was saying something about, you guys can always keep saying Michael never had a childhood. And they were like, my question is, well, how much childhood was the man going to need? If the man was still alive today, would he still be trying to relive his childhood at age 70? I was like, y'all are getting intense. Like, Twitter was crazy. I mean, they were just going at it. And some of the arguments I've also seen. Can I get clarification on this? Some of you guys can do the research on it. And actually, I do have another question about some other research I'll talk about after this. But I've seen statements where they said during the first initial accusations, when they had to go and actually, look at Michael's physical phenotypes and everything like that, and his body parts, I've seen one report where it said that the boy's description of Michael matched. But I've seen another one where it said it didn't match at all. And as a matter of fact, when you had the conversation of circumcision, the description of didn't even match. So can somebody clarify which one is true? If I wasn't so sick and I wasn't strapped to my bed, I would have done it myself. But if somebody can get that out there, there's that. So it's a lot to take in. I haven't seen it, like I said, so I can only give you so much of my opinion. But I'll say this. The truth is going to come out at some point, in some way or some form. And if the truth doesn't come out, the karma always comes around anyway. So if these allegations are true, tough. Really tough. Almost hurts right here. Y'all know Michael's one of my favorite people in the world. I've always been a big Michael and Janet fan, so ouch. If the allegations are not true, shame on the accusers, and shame on the fact that they would take something as serious as, molestation with children and use it for a come up, if that's the truth. As far as, if it's not true with what they're saying and that's literally what they did, then that's going to be a really sad outcome. Because I think I didn't realize how crazy things have been when it comes to the elements of children being victims of sexual assault. I've known it's always been a thing, but I didn't realize it was so prevalent. So I've just been doing my own research on some other things. I'm like, this is crazy. So, if they hopped on that just for their own self-gratification, then shame on them. But we'll see. Another thing, Oprah's been catching it. People are lining into Oprah about hopping on to this and doing her own special. My 2 cents with Oprah is just something feels disingenuous about it. For me, it seemed more of a ratings grab because, of course, this is Michael Jackson, one of the biggest people in the world. And of course, this is a story that's been circulating for years as far as him and the accusations with him and children. That's always been a thing, at least since 1991. And so some people feel it's a ratings grab and it's not even about the victims, because she also has like a bunch of victims of sexual assault in the audience as well. And so some people feel that she's always had a personal vendetta against Michael and the Jacksons and she'll do anything for ratings. And then it almost correlates back to what people were saying with Monique, which I find interesting. When I did my Steve Harvey versus Monique video, a lot of people were saying, well, Monique told Oprah to suck it and blah, 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 and that's not this. And I wanted to respond and do a video on it, but I'm like, it's not that deep. But, as far as Monique telling what Oprah could do, that wasn't in response to Monique not getting jobs. That was more so about something personal to Monique. Monique has been transparent about the fact that, she made allegations that her brother molested her as a child. And so Oprah, around the same time that Precious was coming out, she wanted to have Monique's family on there, including the brother and the mother and Monique and all of them, to talk about what had happened in the past. Monique was like, I requested that doesn't happen. One, I don't have a good relationship with my mother. I'm not really even talking to those members of the family. Just leave it alone. And so, Monique's flipping channels and she looks in, Monique's family's on TV talking about all of Monique's business and everything like that. And so Oprah still went ahead and did it. That's what triggered that beef with Monique and Oprah. And then, Monique never really got a full apology. And when she did kind of get one, it was kind of, I apologize if I did something to offend you. That's what led into Monique really having something against Oprah. And so, I like I said, something does feel a little disingenuous, especially because I think the Jacksons have not helped, but Oprah's made a lot of money off the Jacksons. You remember when Michael died, one of the first things she did was a special with all of the Jackson kids, like Michael's kids and all that. They had a special. Even when Janet was on there doing the Tyler Perry movie, she's supposed to be promoting the movie. Now Oprah then segued into Michael's drug addiction, and she got Janet talking about interventions and everything else like that. And she had LaToya Jackson had a show on the network. So, the Jacksons have always been, I would want to say, not allies. And this isn't a conversation about friends when it comes to crime and everything like that. But it's just very interesting to see the dynamics of what is. And a lot of people are saying, why doesn't Oprah have that same energy with Harvey Weinstein or Les Moonves or some of the other people that are in her circle that are being accused of a lot of similar things? So we'll kind of see where it goes. I wasn't really planning to watch the Oprah thing, but we'll see where it goes. Anyway, that is a tough and a heavy subject, and it's weird because there's no way to address that without pissing somebody off. I know half of you probably hated everything I said, and in that instance, it is okay because I think with a subject so heavy, there's no way everybody's gonna be on the same page, no matter how diplomatic you try to be in your response with it. You know what I mean? And then the thing I was gonna ask you guys about as well, I'm trying to find research on the correlation between gentrification and crime as far as an increase in crime. And what I mean by that is when you have, let's say you have a neighborhood, we're just going to call it neighborhood A. And so neighborhood A starts being gentrified, and there's different elements of neighborhood A that start getting chipped away. They start getting rid of the clinic in that area, and the developer buys up a piece of the neighborhood and starts tearing down some apartments and starts building a high rise or starts building all these different things. And so my question becomes, to the portion of neighborhood A that's left, that hasn't been touched, where the resources have been stripped but the people are still there and new things have been created around them and there's a new world around them that they're not a part of, I'm trying to find research on the correlation between that and an increase in crime. Because what I've also noticed in a lot of cities right now that are being heavily gentrified, crime is going up. Crime is up in Baltimore, crime in DC is up 71%, and it's only March. And I would definitely say DC is probably the head start ringleader in being gentrified right now. And so I've been looking for research on it. So if you have access to something like EBSCOhost that has research on that, please send it to my email. I'm working on some other stuff on the side as well. And so, God, I did not mean to sniffle on camera. I bet that sounds nasty with this mic so hot right now. I'm just, I'm working on some things, so I've been trying to find some research on that. So if you know of any research, please send it to me. Moving on. And then the Jacqueline Smith situation, or the story where there was a story, and I think I talked about it. I can't remember, but the story initially was this was out of Baltimore, where you had a woman who was stabbed for, she was gonna give some money to like a panhandler, like a homeless person asking for some money, and the person killed her. And so that was what we thought happened. And then it turned out really it was her husband and the stepdaughter who killed her, and then they were stopped right before they got to Mexico, to leave the country. And I'm like, that is absolutely crazy. I feel horrible for everybody involved as far as that family, because that's a lot to take in. That is one big package right there. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that thing kind of had me shook as far as dealing with different groups of people who ask you for money sometimes. Because listen, I'm out for a few good months, because this was just down the street in Baltimore. When I tell you my windows used to be closed at the red light, like, nah, man, y'all not stabbing me in the neck. Because goodness, I know, like, depending on where you go over here, you can't even go to the drive-through good. You'll be in the drive-through trying to get your meal, and they, excuse me, I know you ordering, bro, but you got like $5. I'm like, dang, man, can I order the food first? And so that's an interesting. We'll see how that turns out. Absolutely crazy, right? That's terrible. And it's like, I don't understand why people kill their spouses. You can just leave them. And at the end of the day, if it's a money thing where they're gonna get half and you don't want to give up your money, that don't mean you got to kill the person. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's worth it? Losing out on some money when you still get an opportunity to make new money and rebuild, or killing somebody and losing your liberty and ruining somebody's family and ruining your conscience and ruining everything that you've ever built for yourself because for some reason, I don't understand. And then for the stepdaughter to be in on it, like, what kind of mess? What y'all doing? Crazy. And then he was all on camera crying and giving all these kind of press conferences and everything and woo woo woo. Reminds me of Susan Smith. Remember Susan Smith? That was the white lady. She drove her kids in the car. Like, she drove her kids in the water and let them drown in the car. She said this black man stole the car and kidnapped the kids, and everybody was looking for the kids and everything. And mind you, she's the one who done killed the kids. Trifling. Real trifling. Anyway, the last thing I did want to address. I don't know if you've seen this video, but it's coming out of Spain Park High School in Alabama. And it's this video circulating of a bunch of kids hanging out, having a good time, saying a bunch of really racist, terrible things. They're saying, well, one, they really did not rock with Jewish people, so they was going off on the Jewish people. And then on the other element, it was cussing out black people, and they hate N-words, this, that, and the third, and we need to be exterminated. I said, why everybody else got to go after us? Why I got to be exterminated? I don't even know who y'all are. Mind your business. But again, this video just goes to show, when people keep making that argument that something like racism will die out with the older generation. Sorry, folks, it doesn't quite work that way. These kids already got that complex, and they're already saturated in it. And this is the future. Some of them kids will probably have a position as head of diversity over at ABC in 10 years. And another person will probably head a nonprofit working with children in Africa. But in the back of their minds, that's how they really feel about folks. And so it just goes to show you. I was going to play the clip, but you know what? I was like, I'm not even going to put that energy out tonight. But I'll post a link to the clip in the bottom or in the comment section. Absolutely just... and the thing is, if you're going to do all the racist stuff, just don't record yourself doing it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to do some stupid stuff, be smart about it. Like, and mind you, like I've said before, I like when people are upfront with their racism, because I know where you stand. I can't stand people who try to be super, super progressive and be all in your face and want to march with you, and then behind closed doors, they can't stand you at the same time. Those are the worst kind. I would rather you be upfront and let me know that you don't rock with me from jump. I'm cool with that. You stay out of my way, I stay out of yours, and we go our merry way, as opposed to somebody who gets right in the mix of your social circle and everything like that, and then you find out how they really feel. That's some jacked up stuff. And I think it sucks for the students who also have to go to that school, who are black, who are minority, who are anything, because imagine what goes on at that school, And the fact that they were so comfortable with what they were saying, like, there was no shame. And the funniest thing, the girl was the main one running her mouth. You know what I mean? Just excited. I mean, they were happy to do this. I'm like, the stuff that y'all be doing when y'all get behind closed doors. Goodness. Like, I thought I was crazy for giving myself benefit concerts in the house. Like, when I get home and I got that music cranking, I be pacing all around here having a good time. That's what I'm doing. I ain't really running around doing racist stuff. Anyway, I'm going to sleep. I'm about to double up on these meds. This tea is freaking cold now, but I try to make this thing work. I'm about to go put this thing back on the stove and reheat it. Anyway, I'm out. Subscribe. We're going live next week. I'm excited to do that. So let's pray that my equipment works. I was trying to do it this week, but I'm clearly out of it. So also, if you have ideas for the live videos as far as topics, give me your insight. Also, my shout out series comes out as well. A lot of you guys sent me some really cool things, and I have not had a chance to really put the series together and piece everything. But now that I got all of the submissions, man, we got some videos to do. So let's play catch up. Anyway, I'm out. Subscribe.